So we have an endpoint for authenticating users. Now we need to modify the response here. And instead of returning a true value, we need to return a JSON Web Token. A JSON Web Token is basically a long string that identifies a user. As a metaphor, you can think of it as your driver's license or your passport. It's very similar to that. So when the user logs in on the server, we generate this JSON Web Token, which is like a driver's license or passport. We give it to the client and then tell them, hey, next time you want to come back here and call one of our API endpoints, you need to show your passport. You need to show your driver's license. This is your ID. So on the client, we need to store this JSON Web Token, which is a long string, so we can send it back to the server for future API calls. Now, the client can be a web application or a mobile application. If it's a web application, if you're building an application with Angular or React, you can use local storage. That is a special storage place that is available in every browser out there. If you're building a mobile app, you have a similar option depending on what platform you use. So now let me show you an example of a JSON Web Token. Head over to jwt.io. On this website, here we have a debugger for working with JSON Web Tokens. So here in the encoded section, you can see a real example of a JSON Web Token. This long string that you see in the encoded section represents a JSON object. So when we decode this, we'll get a JSON object, okay? Now you can see that this string has 3 parts and each part is color coded. So the first part is red, the second part is purple, and the third part is blue. On the right side, you can see this string decoded. So the red part is what we call the header of a JSON Web Token. In this header, we have 2 properties. One is alg, which is short for algorithm. That determines the algorithm used for encoding this token. And the type is JWT, which is JSON Web Token. Now, we never have to worry about this header. It's just a standard. What matters to us is the second part, the payload, which is the purple part. So here we have a JSON object with 3 properties. Sub, which is like a user ID, name, and admin. Now, the payload that you see is different from the payload I have here because I modified the default JSON Web Token that is on this website. So I generated a custom web token, put it here. What I want to point out here is that this payload includes public properties about the user. Just like on your passport, you have some properties about yourself, like your name, your date of birth, your place of birth, and so on. So we have the exact same concept in a JSON Web Token. We can include a few basic public properties about the user. And with this, every time we send a token from the client to the server, we can easily extract the user ID from the payload. If we need to know the name of the user, then we can simply extract that here as well. We don't have to query the database, send this ID to get a user object, and then extract the name property. By the same token, if you want to know if the user is an admin user or not, we can include that here. So again, we don't have to send an extra query to the database to see if the user with the given ID is admin or not. Now, you might be concerned about this approach from a security point of view because you may think anyone can simply set this admin property for themselves to true, and then they will be treated as admin on the server. But that's not how JSON Web Tokens work. The third part of this JSON Web Token, which is in blue, is a digital signature. This digital signature is created based on the content of this JSON Web Token along with a secret or private key. This secret or private key is only available on the server. So if a malicious user gets their JSON Web Token and modify the admin property, the digital signature will be invalid because the content of the JSON Web Token is modified. Now we need a new digital signature, but the hacker cannot generate this digital signature because they will need the private key, which is only available on the server. So if they don't have access to the server, they cannot create a valid digital signature. And when they send this new tampered JSON Web Token to the server will decline that. The server will say, this is not a valid JSON Web Token. So this is how JSON Web Tokens work.